Call me an ignorant casual, but I only heard about Gris a few weeks before it released, and despite it appearing to be yet another indie puzzle platformer, the striking visuals piqued my interest. The title Gris, spelt G-R-I-S but pronounced Gris, is the French word for grey, because colour, you see, plays an important part in proceedings. I'm shallow though, so let's start by talking about looks. Gris looks absolutely bloody lovely, there is no getting around that. It is, in fact, fucking gorgeous, and the closest we've been to a game being art, because it is literally art. Huge credit has to be given to head artist Comrade Rosette and lead animator Adrian Miguel for creating what is essentially a full motion watercolour painting. The way colours are used here is stunning, and if you've ever worked with watercolour, the picture in your head isn't as good as the result. The game starts off with all the colours fading away until we're left with a stark black and white scene. Eventually colours are introduced and they bleed into the white and mix and blend to create new colours, just like in a watercolour. They give each scene a unique feel that can change depending on what colours are present. Background colours look like clouds of gas or nebulae, and at one point this is literal. It's lovely, and the animation is fantastic too, with the girl's flowing dress and hair, the way she glides through the water, the way animals and objects morph and swirl like they're being painted rapidly in real time. It's stunning. It might not be the technical achievement that Cuphead was, but I think I was more regularly wowed by the visuals in Gris. It helps that the beautiful score works in tandem with the visuals, sweeping and changing with events on screen. If the gameplay and story live up to the artwork, then we're surely looking at an instant classic. Colour is important to the story of Gris too, at least I think it is, based on the achievements you can unlock on Steam and from some vague recollection that, to some, colours are associated with certain emotions. From the few cutscenes of our bright-haired protagonist and the scenery scattered throughout the game world, most notably the weeping statues, it seems that the main theme in Gris is grief. I only really got this after viewing Steam's achievements list though, which relate to the 5 stages of grief as cooked up by some psychologist back in the day. Now this is very subtle and quite clever, especially when different colours in the game seemingly match up with certain grief stages, such as anger, which is red I assume. Visual storytelling can be great, but it isn't really storytelling here, it's thematic. If I was to try and summarise the plot of this game, it would sound like total nonsense. Let's have a go, shall we? The girl who sang like a songbird sang such a high note one day that her voice cracked a sculpture her artist lover was working on, causing a large chunk to fall on her. She didn't die straight away, but slowly deteriorated until one day, in so much pain, she asked the girl to finish her off using a pet electric eel. As the current entered her body, her eyes gave off sparks like distant constellations. The girl never sung again. My problem with storytelling this open to interpretation is that it's not satisfying and can begin to sound ridiculous. Granted, the environment is very dreamlike, but that doesn't mean all reality goes out the window. There are metaphors, and then there's being willfully obtuse. This just crosses that line towards the end, where rather than getting emotional despite the stunning visuals and soaring score, I was left saying, what? Compare this to another lovely looking indie darling, Pinstripe, that I played recently. You slowly unravel the story in that game, and whilst it remains vague and fantastical, you will have a good idea of what happens at the game's conclusion. Pinstripe also had excellent voice acting and endearing characters that you felt emotions for. There is absolutely no one to relate to in Gris, and all I'm left with is a girl who is sad for some reason. The apple-eating rockbot is cute though. Huh, maybe the protagonist's loved one choked on an apple. I was initially worried about the gameplay after the opening cutscene, as you begin a slow walk and then a slow run to the right of the screen, and whilst you can jump, the ambience is nice and the visuals are stunning, it is really just a very linear 2D walking sim at this point. There is seemingly no objective or purpose, and it's as casual as platforming gameplay gets. Even when the first colour bleeds into the scene and the score lifts as you slide down a hill in a beautiful bit of imagery, you aren't actually doing anything. The game may as well be playing itself. This was the intro though, and honestly my sheer delight at the experience of the whole thing meant I was more than happy to carry on. Thankfully, an element of gameplay soon arrives as you are buffeted by an angry red dust storm. It's incredibly simple platforming and puzzle solving, but it's a sign of the positive gameplay progression coming, even if elements of the playing it for you walking sim remain throughout. Gris doesn't have levels as such, it has colours, and the objective is to unlock a new colour to paint the game world and progress. You do this by reaching the statues of a sad girl and standing in her open palm. To help you reach the statues, you must unlock abilities using small dancing circles. The puzzles in the game come from collecting these darting dots. They also help you progress to the statues by building stellar walkways in the sky. Each ability is tied to colour, although you do combine abilities at times as you unlock more of them. The first ability is basically a Kirby's block smash. The girl's dress transforms into a heavy block, wonderfully animated, which allows you to walk through windstorms, break blocks, and tip certain objects in the environment. A double jump, water glide, and even singing are all unlocked at later points in the game. New colours also brings new mechanics, such as boosted jumps, gravity flipping, and manipulating light. The puzzles are never frustratingly difficult, and a few are just about tricky enough to where there's an element of satisfaction at solving them. There are also moments when all these elements click as you zoom through a suspended square of water only to leap to another and then zip out again into a boosted jump. In these, the gameplay really flows, kind of like a painter's brush over canvas. See what I did there? I done did a metaphor. I just wish there were more of these moments, because it's then that the game becomes more than just an experience in soaking up the sights and sounds. It becomes something fun to play. There are a couple of bosses too, and you can make use of your abilities to tackle them, but only one is really satisfying from a gameplay perspective, and even then you can't lose. You cannot die in Gris, and whenever a section of gameplay looks like it might be tricky, the game wrestles control from you. One of the bosses chases you through a series of underwater canyons, and the score and the animation would have you believe this is an exciting and dangerous chase, but it's all an illusion. You have some movement control, and you can boost away from the enemy, but it's all heavily scripted and on rails, and when you realise this, some of the magic is gone. Some challenging stakes would be good, as they'd help me invest in the world and the story, and honestly stop me from getting bored, which I did on occasion. It seems that in our gorgeous 2D platformers we can't have difficulty curves. We either get a Cuphead or a Gris, hardcore or casual. This is an incredibly short game too, which is probably for the best. If ever I started to drift into a calm, unfocused haze as I was jogging along another seemingly endless bridge, some new bit of visual magic would eventually appear to make me sit up and go, wow. New abilities and gameplay elements are also well paced, and whilst nothing here is particularly innovative, it still feels kind of fresh. Perhaps just because of the way it's presented. Gris is a game that I think is meant to be experienced in a single sitting, and experience it is what you do. This is the closest I think we've come to a game being literal art. It's an audio-visual feast for the eyes and ears, with both components enhancing each other. Honestly, I still don't think I can agree with the mainstream critics and call it a masterpiece though. It's easy enough to finish Gris in under 4 hours, and while some of that time you'll truly be spellbound by the spectacle, I don't think I was ever emotionally invested, despite the art, animation and music doing its best to sway me. The silent, obscure storytelling left me feeling a little cold, and whilst the gameplay is sometimes clever, and in rare instances a joy, my positive lasting memories will be mostly superficial. If you can get the same kind of emotional investment out of Gris which I got out of Pinstripe, then I'd wholeheartedly recommend it. For everyone else, I'd still probably recommend it, just to see this beautiful work of art in motion.